Welcome to Cheap Chills on Art and Monsters. My name is Ben Walker Story, and I'm an illustrator, animator type, creator, and I like to talk to other artists about what's going on in our lives and how we make do, all that good stuff. And so I've got this podcast where we talk about art and monsters and all that. Now, this is a conversation with Patrick Carson Sparrow. He is a cartoonist, comic book artist. What can we say about this talk? This podcast is called On Art and Monsters, right? And so we kind of go into it with the expectation of what we're going to talk about. That said, it's also a super loose conversation with another human being who is an artist, but if we have stuff in common, like maybe both being middle-aged dads, trying to figure out our way in life, maybe struggling with some mental health issues, that stuff might come up. And it did in this conversation. So this one is a really great talk, but it's very loose and intimate, sort of a conversation. So, you'll want to go into this with the mindset of being more of a fly on the wall for two dudes who are commiserating. Yeah, it's just a chat. Also, there is a trigger warning. Stuff gets pretty real in this conversation, and things come up, including like self-harm, suicidal ideation, subjects like domestic abuse even come up. So if that is something that is not going to be good for you to be hearing about right now, I would say, don't skip the whole episode, but maybe just kind of cut out at the halfway mark, half hour, maybe skip that part. That said, I think it's really cool that we were examining feelings and subjects that are taboo and how diving into it, whether it's in your art, talking with people, it can be a way to end up feeling safe and better and free yourself from some of those demons and trauma. So I'm excited for you guys to hear this episode. So let's get into it. Here's me talking to Patrick Carson Sparrow.
He's one of us.
We accept you.
It's the Cheap Chills Show.
Very nice.
And now, here is your host, Ben Walker Story.
All right. Well, Patrick, I don't know a lot about you. I've seen your art. We follow each other on Instagram, and I nosed around before the interview, of course. But your like biography is a mystery. You don't seem to be sort of. You're a mystery in an enigma.
I like that. That's, what? I think you put it better than what I could. And I think that's probably a lot cooler than the reality of it. I just recently sort of changed my biography because it used to just say, maker of weirdo comics. But I kind of felt like that was a bit inaccurate, that I'm not making comics at the volume that I used to. But I think that was probably the main thing that I was sort of known for in recent memory was doing a plethora of weird sort of underground comics, but it's sort of shifted focus lately. But I don't know. I make art, and it's funny when I meet people. Like, I'll do comic conventions where I exhibit shows. I'll do like art galleries where I exhibit, stuff that I've made, and people always just assume like this is all I'm doing because of what I'm posting. I'm like, no, there's a bunch of other stuff going on you have no idea of. That there's like a full-time job and there's kids involved. People are always weirded out when they find out that I have kids.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah.
No, but you know what? I obviously I can relate, because I think that when you have kids, your drive for what is like important to do with your time becomes like focused for the first time, maybe, if you weren't already. And so
focus has always been a challenge. Yeah. For me. Anyway.
I mean, me too. And so when you have less time because something more important has come around, that means like you really got to to carve out that time for this stuff with what's left of your time to do the important stuff, which would be hopefully your art.
Yeah. That's the thing too. It's like carving out the time to do art, and then since time is so scarce, there's only so many hours a day and so many free moments in a day. It's like, what art do I want to prioritize my time for? And for the longest time, it was comics. Like I have a 5-year-old daughter at home, and it's kind of weird that since she was born is when I've done the bulk of my comics work. I've probably done about like 12 different comics ranging from like horror to mostly comedy. But recently it's kind of become a struggle to do anything like long form narrative in comics or even like short form narrative in comics with like gag strips and stuff, because it's just, I kind of find that I fell into this trap of, is this something that I would like, that I think is funny, or is it something that I think that other people that will read it is funny? Do I think that this is something that people will engage with or buy or consume? And then it became about that, like the consumable of it and the content of it. And it was, it really lost a lot of its sort of allure that was once there, which was weird. Like, I don't know. So yeah, lately it's just been like, I've just been doing a ton of different weird painting and just weird, different like art collage stuff. And I'm trying to post less. Like I probably went like 2 months without going on any social media, which is like the longest I've like ever done that since it's been created in any form, which was a pretty good like mental palate cleanser. And I'm just trying to make it a priority. Like, okay, I'm going to go on social media this time of day on this one day a week. So Sundays in the evening, that's my new time to check Instagram. I'll download the app. I'll check it. If I have messages, I'll respond to them. And if I don't, I won't. I might post a thing or I might not. And I'm just trying to be really kind of more choosy with it and just not get wrapped up in the nonsense of seeking validation and
that's smart.
You know, monetary gain. Like I got rid of my online store too. It's like shipping's a pain in the ass, and half these orders get lost, and people are bummed out that it's so expensive to ship and customs and tracking and blah 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 blah. And you know what? Like I don't really want to deal with it right now. So if I do a show, I'll see you at a show. If I don't, then I won't. And that's not that I don't want to reach as many people as possible. It's just I kind of got to prioritize my head. And the I
saw that you have an Etsy shop, right? Is this the one you're talking about?
Yeah. And that was open and active for like 10 plus years.
Oh, okay. Because there's like 3,000 plus sales and there's nothing on there. So I wasn't sure how you did that.
And that was too, like the platform. Like, it's funny, when I first got on it, people would be like, oh, you're on Etsy? What are you selling? Fucking crochet stuff? Like, it was where people's grandmas went, or like, you know, people's eccentric aunts went to like sell scrapbooking supplies. But, you know, there were a lot of great people and random artists on there. Like, you like weirdo art. Like, do you know like Friend Prices, like Don Picton? Yeah. So like I saw him on Etsy, and he still lives or dies by his Etsy store, it seems. So it was like, oh, fucking he's on there. It's cool enough for me to be on there. Or like Jim Madison, like Print Destroyer. Are you familiar with him? Yeah. Your art, what you like is just right up his alley, I'm sure. Like it's similar monster aesthetic, but
I know Friend Prices is a guy who's tough to reach. I think I had to write through Etsy because he's tough to reach, but that's a guy that really kind of informed the look and feel of, you know, of what I'm trying to do when I shifted gears into the spookier stuff. I was working at Famous Monsters magazine, and I was supposed to be like art directing their merch and stuff and social media and everything. And it was just all very stodgy then at that point.
That's cool. You worked for Famous Monsters. I got a Famous Monsters banner above my office desk at home. The one, it's the I got the two-headed. I can't remember what the name of the monster is, but
kind of an ogre with two heads.
With like a spiked mace. And a Godzilla one too that you guys had.
That's cool. Yeah, but it was a weird time to be there, and I was just like looking at this kind of, I don't know, just kind of uncool, stodgy stuff, and it was kind of just stuck in the past because they didn't have their own sort of direction at that point. And I found friend prices, and I was just like, our feed should look like this. Our merch should look like this. It'll be like colorful and fun and kind of stupid, you know. It doesn't have to be so.
It makes sense.
It doesn't have to be so serious.
Yeah, I like that. I like when people have a bit of a playful aspect to their aesthetic or what they are doing. Because then, like, obviously people that are artists, they take their work seriously, but it's not to say that you can't have fun with it and it has to be this precious sort of stagnant, stuffy thing. Like, I don't know. It's art's funny like that. People get in their head about, it's probably, again, like, oh, what can we make that's going to sell? And they're not knowing that that's going to sell with a proven track record. But, Yeah, I think you're in the right area. I mean, because his stuff's super cool. I love seeing his random posts, too. It's like, all of a sudden, someone from out of the woodwork will send him a photo of, oh, here's Slash from Guns N' Roses wearing a random Friend Prices shirt. Here's Rob Zombie wearing a Friend Prices shirt. Why? Because someone in his camp found his Etsy and bought it.
Yeah.
And that's pretty random and cool. And he's just like lone guy slinging his own prints and doing his weird artwork very much in his own lane, doing his own thing. I know that he's had a bunch of stuff. Like, I've talked to him a little bit here and there. He's a nice guy. I think he had a kid around the same time that I did. And I think he's had some stuff with his father passing away in like recent memory. It's probably been a bit hard, but yeah, he's a good guy to talk to. A lovely human being.
So yours is 5.
Yep.
So is she off to preschool now? Are you getting a little bit more time to yourself, or is it full time?
I don't really have any more time to myself. I worked full time when she was littler, and I'm still working full time now. And she's in senior kindergarten now, but she starts school at 9 and she ends school at 3, which is a very short day. And, I start work at 7 and I end work at 3:30. So, we still have to get like aftercare and people to look after her when she's done school for that small sliver, so I can, get done work.
Right.
And my wife works from home. She, helps offset some of that stuff, but she's a therapist, so it's not like she can work from home and have our daughter around if she's in session with people, because she's pretty loud and disruptive. If she's got a sick day, it's not like my wife could just keep working uninterrupted, like if she was an accountant or something. So I don't know. We got one child, and she's very like demanding of our time, only child, and quite often, like when she's home from school, it's like we're spending our time like playing with her, doing whatever with her or for her. So she still takes up a lot. Like anything you see that I post or I make largely gets made like in the hours between like 9 p.m. and like 1 a.m. on any given weeknight.
See, I had the mornings for a while. I could kind of get up at 5 and maybe have at least an hour, maybe even 2 before others got up. But just kind of between my son getting a little older, and he's 7 now, and then we have different dog situation than we had before. We used to have an older dog. We used to have an older dog who would sleep with us, needed to be in the room with us, and he was cool that way. These dogs now are young. They're barely 2. And they need to be in the room that I used to have to myself in the mornings. So they don't allow me to like hang out.
Yeah. It's funny too. I got to be conscious of what I'm doing and when I'm doing it downstairs. Cause like another thing that I've really gotten into lately with the painting is like doing like weird woodcuts and like a little bit of like, not woodworking, but I guess it's, maybe light woodworking, but I can't do that stuff after 9 because it's too goddamn loud. Like I was having the most fun. Like I carved a R2-D2 out of wood with like movable legs, and I call him R2-Tree2. Yeah. But I can't I can't, work on the bench grinder or anything after 9. Everyone in my house will kill me. Because that stuff, I got a budget for like when my daughter is away at like swim meets on like Saturday mornings, and I have like a half hour. I was like, okay, now I can do the loud stuff.
I'm such an idiot. A couple months ago, I was in the zone just drawing in the morning, and nobody else was up, and I got it. Like, I think I was listening to like Sisters of Mercy or something, and I was singing out loud, full-throated singing and not realizing it. Yeah. And everybody got up and was like, "What are you doing?" Was
like, did they wake you up, or you woke them up?
I woke them up. I was like, I didn't even realize I was singing out loud. I'm sorry. I had the headphones on.
I love that you were just vibing that much to it. Really, when you're just enjoying yourself and you're in the zone, everything else fades away. That's lovely.
Yeah. Well, tell me about your influences and how you got started drawing and all that good stuff.
I've always drawn. I think like the first stuff I can remember drawing when I was a kid was like Ninja Turtles, and kind of like, not unlike the note I was saying, like, oh, I got to get away from validation of artwork. But I remember, being in like kindergarten, drawing Ninja Turtles and them actually looking like Ninja Turtles and everyone being really impressed. I'm like, oh shit, that's cool. I'm gonna keep doing that. So, like when I was a kid, there's a lot of the cartoons I liked, the Batmans, the Ninja Turtles of it. I liked comics when I was a kid a lot, although I was always a very poor reader, which is, kind of weird to like grow up to draw and write comics. But I like that stuff a lot. I really liked. I'm in Canada, so I kind of grew up watching a channel called Space Station, which was sort of, our home for like broadcasting weird, like B horror and sci-fi stuff. So when I was young, they had on the hilarious House of Frightenstein at like 7 a.m. in the morning. Yeah. So, stuff like that. I always like really liked that weird sort of like monstery stuff. We always got a bunch of like ton of cool movies at our house because my mom had the good fortune of working at like a video distribution center when I was a kid. So we always got weird screeners of like random shit that like I probably shouldn't have watched, but really like watching, and that sort of informed that. Like I always loved drawing monsters. I love drawing good guys with swords and bad guys with swords and stuff like that. And as I got older, I like kind of like segued into like metal music and like alternative music, and then just like seeing album covers and band shirts, stuff like that. Really like kind of blended it into some of that stuff that I liked from when I was young. And then it just sort of like kept feeding that that aesthetic that I love, those things that I love. Like I love Pushead, I found like Misfits albums when I was a kid. That was amazing. Even when like, I was in like grade school, like, Korn were huge and I loved Korn. And they have like Todd McFarlane album covers, which, like you look back on it now, maybe it's not like the coolest, but hey, I fucking loved it. And I still think it's amazing.
He changed
and
the
he was doing like weird animation.
Yeah.
Yeah. He changed everything for like toys and comics, and he still like is an innovator of that, in my opinion.
I was just talking to somebody on Reddit though about like, oh, my kid keeps breaking all my Spawn figures. And I was just like, I get it, but just so you know, like those aren't worth anything anymore. They're like,
no, they're not.
They're like our Beanie Babies.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. They're like Beanie Babies, like where your fucking, spinster aunt would have Beanie Babies.
This is going to be worth something.
Nephew would have Spawn. It's going to be worth. None of them are worth anything. But they're cool. They were fun. Sculpted detail and just really gory, crazy characters that you never see in toys before. Now, I loved those toys when I was young. I'll always loved toys.
Did you have an older sibling or anything that was pointing this stuff out to you?
No, not really. How do you
find the cool stuff when you're that age? I was so uncool.
I mean, it's not that I was cool either, man. Like my first music that I always went back to was for some reason, even though I was like in the 3rd or 4th grade, I really liked Buddy Holly.
Yeah.
So like, with the metal stuff, I would also like really like to listen to like old, I guess like rockabilly and Buddy Holly stuff. And I would wear like dress shoes to school and slick back my hair when I was in the 3rd grade. And people thought I was like a nut job and that I was just the weirdest, lamest kid. And that's just because like I had a pocket radio that I could like listen to with headphones, and just like that was the one station I could get that was good quality, was like the 50s oldie station. So I really got into Buddy Holly. So like anything that happened, like this is just like chance. Like my mom had a period where she really liked metal music when I was really young. So I had, apart from like the Buddy Holly stuff, I also had like vests with like Metallica Damage Inc. patches and Iron Maiden patches before I knew what any of that stuff was. But, I think that sort of aesthetic of those artwork pieces kind of seeped in. Because once again, like that was like, the Pushead tour poster for Damage Inc. And, go back and see the Misfits. Like, this jives with something. I remember being in the 8th grade. We had this thing called gotcha certificates. If you got caught being good. Oh, yeah, my kid has that. Yeah, there you go. It's like a little bribe for not being a douchebag. Yeah. But I remember... they give you like a little gotcha slip. You got to put it in the raffle box. And like, one day I won the raffle prize, which was like a music store gift card. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So it was like the 8th grade. I got to pick a Misfits album with my gift card, and like, oh, there's that awesome Pushead artwork. I'm like, this is amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah, music, movies, art, comics, it all sort of blends.
Yeah, you got a head start on me then, because I was so uncool, and like I was kind of the greasy, weird kid.
I was the greasy, weird kid though too. Yeah. Like it only sounds cool now. At the time, it was torturous.
You put grease in your hair though, right? I was just
I did,
not
and
bathing.
it was not cool. I definitely I had no friends for the longest time. Like that was 3rd, 4th grade. Like that was around the time too where like I moved to a different town, and I showed up like looking like this, thinking like, oh, this is going to be so cool. And like everyone was just such a dick for so long, which it was brutal. And like the more I tried to fit in or like interact with people, like the worse it would be. Like it's charming in retrospect, but at the time, like that really that informed like a good chunk of who I am for sure, as much as I would like for that to like totally slide off my back when I'm young. That was like a crazy time.
Yeah, we do our best to tell our kids how to, not let that stuff bother you. But I mean, when it's your world, I don't know how much
exactly. They're able to. Yeah, you as an adult with like, pretty decent cognitive ability, you have the benefit of having foresight, and you have the benefit of having perspective from like, where you've been. And kids, all they know is just like what's in front of them in this moment, right? So if something's going bad, regardless of how bad it is, it's like the end of the world. Like, this is their small world, and this is something that's not going good in it, so it's like the end of the world. It's pretty crushing. So when I hear my daughter's having a hard time at school, it's like, oh fuck.
Yeah. My boy is like in a weird place with that, because he's so much better at like making friends instantly than I ever could dream of being.
Oh, that's good.
Like at the playgrounds and stuff. And he's got a bunch of friends, and everybody says hi to him at school, and even kids that he doesn't know. He's like, I don't know that kid. How does he know my name? He's like clearly popular, but he has troubles, and he gets in trouble with the teacher and everything. And I think that when kids don't like heap praise on him like he's used to so far in his 2 years or so of going to school. Now in 2nd grade, he's like, they're not like worshiping me basically the way they were, there's kids who don't really like me there.
How dare these kids not bow down and pay homage? That's funny. Yeah. That kind of sounds like my daughter too. Like she's, well, still, only senior kindergarten, but like all the kids know who she is. And they all run up to her and they're stoked to see her, and she doesn't remember who most of them are, which is like so odd. And it's weird. Sometimes like she'll come home and be like, I don't have any friends. I don't play with anybody. They're like, really? Is that like it? Or did you not want to play with anybody? Or like, do you think like, I don't know. What is it? It's odd, but I don't know. So much growing to do. It's hard sometimes to see the forest through the trees when you're a kid. And I would say that it means nothing to a kid.
Right. He had this like kind of basically like a metal ballad that he started singing. He doesn't normally do this, but I think we were talking about making songs about our childhood or something. And he goes, when I'm growing up, I'm going to be in a rock band and I'm going to sing. And he started singing this like, sometimes I'm super happy and sometimes I'm sad. And he's like pulling his face down to be like ultra sad. And I was like, oh, right. Like he's kind of letting us in a little bit more than usual on like his real mood swings there.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I guess too, he's getting a little bit older. Maybe he's a little bit better at articulating himself. Yeah, that's good though. That's cool. He's going to be in a little bit. I hope that he is, man. That'd be fucking awesome.
What's going on? Let's check in. Let's check in with Ben.
All right, this is the portion of the podcast where we just check in with me, Ben, and see what's going on with me. The other day I decided that it's really time to revamp my website and explain what it is that I do and who I am and all that good stuff. And I realized that I had deactivated it a year ago because I wasn't sure what it is that I do and what it is I want to tell people about. My portfolio was full of stuff that was maybe it was stale, and it was stuff that I wasn't really necessarily trying to get work in doing. When I realized when you're starting to try to do that you need to know. You need to know what it is you're trying to communicate, and in order to do that, you need to know within yourself what it is that you do. And I feel like that's really been kind of getting spread out for me in a lot of different experiments and paths that didn't go anywhere. So I went ahead and had a little experiment where I just took out some note cards and I wrote down like my title. But like, this is me and this is my title, but like 3 or 4 different options so that I know where to like go, what to shoot for, what is good use of my time, whether I'm making money at it or not. If it's going toward this one goal, this one title, it's going to help. So I went ahead and wrote down a couple titles. And the one that felt good for me right now is comic book cartoonist, which is weird because I haven't done comics in a long time and it's a little scary, but I just want to see what I can come up with. And it's something that I can do on my own without needing to like outsource anything or hire a team or even be on the computer if I don't want to, right? So what I'm going to actually do before there's a website is I've set up shop on substack.com. And actually, I've gone ahead and imported all the episodes of this podcast onto Substack. There's going to be maybe some solo episodes where I'm just talking about more personal stuff or how to, do art, whatever, that kind of thing. So that's substack.com/@BenWalkerStory. And of course, story is with an EY. And hey, if you like this podcast, the best way to help it grow would be to go ahead and write a review. 5 stars, of course, but if you put some words on there, that would help too. Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcasts, please go ahead and write a review. And that's what's going on with me, Ben. Let's get back to the talk with Patrick, already in progress. So what should we talk about what you do during the day? Is that part of the bio?
No, that's like it's funny. Like I only ever like talk about that stuff when people are like, when's your next show? Are you traveling to such and such festival? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? And I'm like, nah, man, I got to go to like work in the morning. I got to go to whatever. And they're like, what? You got a day job? But yeah, I work I'm a project manager for a sign company. I used to work in construction and, working in the field and then eventually like work my way into the office. So, it's nothing like crazy cool to write home about, but it's like, a lot of like contract negotiation, purchase orders, sourcing materials, vendors, pricing. But, that's the day job, right? There were people that were willing to pay me more to do that than they were to pay me to draw monsters.
Right. That's tough.
Yeah, it is tough, and that's the other thing too. It's like, with doing the art that I do, like, I'm so quick to turn down any like commission stuff. Yeah. It's like what we said about time being so valuable and so hard to come by. I really want to focus on what I want to draw, what I want to do. And if it happens to be something that someone else wants me to do and not what I want to do, regardless of whether or not they're paying me for it, it's like, no, I don't got the time or the capacity to do this.
Right.
Yeah, that's the day job. And yeah, just a dad. Do you just have the one kid, the one son, or multiple kids?
One and done. We started late. Like my wife is 8 years younger than I am, but she still was, put in the geriatric mother ward or whatever. When, if you're like in your 30s, they're just like, it's a whole different thing at the hospital. So
that's my wife had. So yeah, our daughter, my wife is 8 years older than me, and she had her when she was in her 40s. So they were like fucking worried as hell. And it's like, dude, like people do this. Like this is not anything crazy, but yeah, geriatric mother. It's so weird when it's like, you're still so young.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and then like I think if it wasn't for, obviously coming out of her body, she's just going to say no to the next one. But aside from that, it's just like the sleep deprivation is just drives you insane for a good couple of years at least.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't need to go back to that.
Yeah, man, I had like it's so weird. Like, I don't know what anyone else's experience is like having a kid, but, you know, when our daughter was born, like, I kind of had, I guess for lack of a better term, mental breakdown, if I'm being honest with you. Because I just, I didn't know. I have a lot of new responsibilities and things to do and a new person that I'm beholden to. And there's the pressure of that and the pressure of the day-to-day and work and being a husband, and just like with my way that I'm wired in my head prior to any of this, really wasn't handling it well. And it's crazy how, like, having a kid, there's so much in the past that I thought I was over with and done in the past. But no, it's like that thing where you think you're done with the past, but the past isn't done with you. And then all these things would come up, because I had kind of like a weird upbringing that was tumultuous at times. Yeah. And for our daughter to be kind of a mirror to that, like, kind of like broke me in certain ways. So yeah, like, I had a really bad time, like, within the first, like, I think year and a half of her being born. Like, I like screamed at work and stormed out and quit my job, and like my fucking wife like lost it. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, we got a new kid at home. What are you doing quitting your job? But I was just like, I just totally broke, and I couldn't do it anymore. And went and worked in like a shitty factory where, like, I got like nerve damage in my arms, which was like a crazy thing too, because like I love making art. So like, what does that mean for me?
It was your good arm?
It was both. It was both. No. Like, I worked like, building like pallets and stuff. I'd be like lifting like 25,000 pounds on average a night, like working overnights and in like temperature, like controlled environments where it was like either like really cold or really hot. And yeah, like, it got to be like, if I had my hands out straight for like, a minute when I was operating any machinery, my hands would start to go numb. Yeah. And like, wow. It was just like really crazy. Like, from my elbows down, like, I just like would stop having feeling in my arms. And I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? This is crazy. And I just wasn't doing well. But, what I didn't know at the time, and I didn't really have the language to try to navigate or get help with, was, I'm going through, like, I have depression. It's not that I'm like going through a depression. Like, I have depression and like ADHD and anxiety issues. They were all just sort of like recently diagnosed. Yeah. Which how come I keep meeting
people who are exactly the same as me through this podcast? But successful versions. No,
I don't know about successful, but you know what I mean? I not that we know each other terribly well, but, I think liking some of the things that you and I think that stuff is kind of like a beacon to other like-minded individuals that, like, regardless of whether or not, like, we have the same worldview, we might have some sort of similar non-neurotypical ways of thinking. Of acting, you know what I mean? Because most people don't like monsters. Most people don't like scary stuff. Most people don't like gross stuff. So who are the people that do? Well, maybe it's people that have trauma, people that have, questions about their own mortality or death or whatever.
So do you find that you're doing sort of with anxiety? I feel like I'm doing sort of a tango dance with the things I take in, like movies and stuff, because when it's the right kind of thing, escapist kind of stuff, or just spooky enough, it's just super like therapeutic escapism. And so the anxiety gets alleviated. But then every once in a while I'll watch something that just completely triggers me because it's just too close to what feels like it could totally happen to me and my loved ones at any moment. And then you're just like, you're just like ruined to go out of the house. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's weird too. Like I love horror movies, but like, since time is kind of finite, like, I don't end up watching a lot of movies these days. What I end up watching, and this is fucking terrible, are like a bunch of like, YouTube compilations of like horrifying dash cam footage or horrifying like carjackings caught on camera, stuff like that. And it's like, why the fuck am I watching like home invasions caught on Ring cameras, like watching compilations of that. And like, this is real stuff. I was like, why the fuck am I watching this? And it's not even that like it gives me anxiety. It doesn't give me anxiety. I think it's just that like in my ever moving brain, I don't know that it levels me out, but I think it helps me sort of like examine things and look at things. Like I used to kind of think of like horror movies and monsters in a way that, horror and monsters in these movies and books and comics was like a way for you to like safely examine like real life, like mortal dangers and risks in like a way that was safe. And if you wanted to like collect DVDs, it was almost like akin to like having domain over everything evil, like on your shelf, like you owned it all and it was all there. But you could safely watch a home invasion movie and, you're not in it. You can safely watch a body horror movie that has all this like horrifying subtext about like, puberty or sexuality and like hormones, and it's safe because you're not turning into a mutant.
You live through it and you feel better.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the end of Full Metal Jacket, wasn't it? Full Metal Jacket, where the guys had a whole shootout, and then they found out that the sniper was in Vietnam was like a little girl, and he had killed her. And then he's like, right. I felt super bad. But then I remembered that I'm alive. I'm still alive, and I'm going to feel okay about that too. And he like got a little sort of euphoric almost, I think.
Yeah, that was fucked up.
It's like, yeah, it is. But you can be like, oh, I see that. Like if you sort of live through something, you can feel better afterwards, and even if it's just like a movie or I should probably tell this to a therapist and not you on a podcast, but the other day
that's fine.
I was listening to
lay it on me.
I was listening to all the Bjork albums, which I don't think I've ever sort of gotten through all of them. And she's like amazing lyricist. And her one album with Army of Me, the second song I think is fairly popular too, but I'm blanking on the name of it. But I'm just listening to for the first time to the lyrics while I'm drawing. And it was about like, all her songs seem to be about like things she does alone that are kind of dangerous and weird, involving like diving into the ocean at night and stuff. But the song was about like, I go to the beach and there's like these rocks, and I go to the cliff and I look down at the rocks below the cliff, and I start to imagine like, what would it sound like when my body hits these rocks? Really going fully delving into a visceral, imaginative fantasy of like the worst thing you can imagine. And then the next line is that she does all this to go home and feel safe with her family and her husband or whatever. And it's like, oh shit. I started getting all teary eyed. I was like, there's something there, and I can't fully unpack it yet, but there's something about like going to the full depths of imagining darkness in order to fully live your life, and you're not suicidal. There's something kind of beautiful about that, but very dark, obviously.
Yeah, very dark, and it's like a very taboo subject to talk about in any degree, like you could be talking about wanting to kill yourself, you could be talking about having had previous attempts, you could be talking about a loved one that's passed away, and a lot of people kind of deal with all of those things in the same way of kind of deflect and ignore because of their own fears or insecurities or their own perceptions of the taboo of it. But I feel like it's very healthy to say things like that, to do things like that, to examine your own mortality in your own life and your own existence, and not just be ignorant to those things, because everyone's going to live and everyone's going to die. So like I've had issues with like that in the past, like thinking about things like that and dancing with things like that, with like the depression, there's like risk of like there's like suicidal ideation and just like weird sense of like worthlessness that comes with that. And, sometimes you think like, oh, it would be better if I wasn't here. People would be better off because that's just how low you are. But that's not the reality. But sometimes all it takes is just one bad moment and then you're gone. Yeah. So to examine that stuff, to talk about that stuff, like that's good. That's valuable. That should be more normal than, talking about anything else. Like I would love to be able to talk about mental health the way that we talk about the weather, but we don't.
It's the people who don't and think it's super taboo to even approach that feel like they're the ones that twist off. And you're like, what? He seemed like a quiet neighbor before this happened. They're talking to a news reporter about him now. That's who doesn't talk about or think about these things.
Yeah. There's the way it seems and then the way it is. And it's weird. Like, and like that was the other thing too. Like I said, like having a daughter and really having to examine these things like about myself that I didn't even like really have as much of an awareness of, because I didn't really want to examine them either. Like I didn't want to admit that there were things wrong with me in the way that I was thinking or the way I was operating, because no one wants to, be made to feel like they're defective. No one wants to admit that there's something wrong, that they need help, but there's nothing wrong with doing that. So when it came to be time to like, seek clinical help, to get on like a regimen with like medication, like my wife's like reading this like 10-page report about like a psych evaluation. And this is my wife of like 10 years. And she's like, oh, it says here that you want to kill yourself. Like, yeah, I guess so. And she's just like shocked. Right. And my wife is a therapist. Right. And I'm like, yeah, it's like no reflection like of you. This is just, past traumas coupling with like, current tensions. Like I haven't been handling stuff well for a long time, but, I'm doing a lot better now. I got to, help a lot of people around me that care about me. And, because we've had a daughter, it's like, okay, I got to do better with myself for her, because I can't afford to go off the deep end where I have to take care of another person. But then also like that's allowed me to like see a little bit of like some of the warning signs of like, oh, the way that she reacts in this situation. Like I remember being that type of kid, like this hurt type of like little child. And it wasn't that long ago. And it really was part of me. It still is. So when I see that in her, like these like slight reflections of it, because, it's not like she's the same person I was. It's like, okay, I get this. I have an idea of what we could do if this continues, if this spirals, if that and the other, because that's like a weird thing too. Like ADHD, it's like part genetics, it's part, environment. Like there are people that like have ADHD that don't have like a genetic disposition for it or genetic background with family members that have it, that, develop this as a coping mechanism to like traumatic upbringings, you're prone to zoning out because you have ADHD. Maybe that was a valuable survival mechanism when, your dad was beating the shit out of your mom when you were a kid. And you were next, you know what I mean? So you zone out. And then the teacher's like, hey, you can't pay attention. What's wrong with you? And that just adds to it.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's other people.
There was so much confusion when I got my diagnosis, because it was the same thing of like, I went to seek help for ADHD, and it ended up being like, here's your diagnosis and everything for anxiety and depression. And they had this theory that I was zoning out for whatever reason, because I wasn't needing to be super alert, because I wasn't at home, I was at school instead, or these symptoms and issues seem to all kind of be circular. And I think that even psychologists are still trying to noodle it all out for all of us.
Yeah, I think there's definitely like a lot of work to be done, and breaking down the taboos of it, even from like a social and medical perspective. But it's definitely been like a big learning curve finding out this stuff, even just like about myself, because I see like she zones out, she can't pay attention, she can't do that, and she doesn't have the trauma that I had, but she's got the genetics, and like I didn't know, like I feel like there's like a Venn diagram of like ADHD, depression, anxiety, OCD, and autism. And I feel like everybody that has like one of those things, they probably have like at least two more of those things. You know what I mean? And there's like an overlap in how you're neurologically mapped.
Yeah, even if it's to a lesser extent on some of them, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Like I feel like most people that have ADHD, they are, dealing with depression, or they're dealing with anxiety, or they're dealing with OCD, or they might be on a spectrum where maybe they're not dealing with depression, but they have like issues with social cues and personality stuff. But I don't know. It's weird to see. Like, I didn't know. Like, I had so many troubles as a kid, in school and in relationships and in family. And, I didn't know until I was like 36 that, my dad has ADHD. Because I don't know my real dad. I was able to find that out, that he has ADHD. His sister has ADHD. And another one of his siblings has ADHD. My sister, who I guess is technically my stepsister, she's not related to my biological dad, but she has ADHD. So, I'm kind of got a genetic disposition of it from like both sides of my family. So like, oh, okay. This is like, this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That coupled with like a history of like, mental health and addiction issues throughout my family. Like, of course there's people that have problems, but none of these people, were getting the diagnoses or the help for it. It's just sort of like this perpetuating like cycle of damage.
Yeah. And like for me with my family, nobody's ever going to get diagnosed. Like, I'm the first person that I know of in the family that has gone to talk to a professional, because I think that religious beliefs or whatever can really get in the way of that, of like thinking that you can pray things away, to mentally, people with mental health problems, like probably my uncle is probably bipolar, but he's never been diagnosed or helped because they've theorized that he's got a demon in him. That kind of stuff. It really gets in the way of understanding that. Even when I tried to explain to my mom ADHD and talk to her about my childhood, when I was diagnosed 5 years ago almost, and trying to ask her about like what, if anything, was done, if I was able to talk to any professionals or anything like that, and talking about what goes on when you have these issues. It's like juices in your brain that aren't squirting correctly. You know what I mean? Like there's deficient like little glands and stuff in your head, and they're real and they're part of your biology. And,
it's legitimate.
And for her, it was just like, well, is it because your dad left when you were 3, or is it because, I didn't hug you enough, or because you got made fun of that time, or, it was all very kind of emotional questions and that sort of thing. And I think they just don't get it.
Yeah. I think that's a very like acute way of looking at it, like just through this one lens of like spirituality or even just like emotional, like intelligence, when like the reality is like, it's a cocktail of a bunch of different things. Like, you have the wiring of your mind is just different. Yeah. The parts of it don't work the way other people's do. And that's not to say that that's the other thing too, is like people like hear about that and talk about that. Like there's something like, wrong with you. Like maybe your mother like takes that on herself. Like there's something wrong with my son because of something that I did as a mother, when that's not the case. It's just, this is the way that you are for whatever the reasoning is. And this is the way that to navigate the world. And the world's not made for you, I'm betting you felt out of step and, apart from the crowd and like an outcast your whole life. Yeah. And I bet you probably would have felt that same way, whether you were, homecoming king, or if you were, a fucking nerd that got beat up and ate lunch alone in the bathroom every day. Because this is like how you're wired. And external factors definitely play a part in that, and how you evolve. But there's something there innately.
Yeah. And then when we get into adulthood and start to process, how our childhoods were different and how we're different and how it's okay, we can wear that stuff as a badge of honor, and be like, it's what made me what I am today. It's like when Conan had to like do all the horrible things, like pushing that wheel or whatever it was called.
He's just grinding whatever it was.
And then he had to be a gladiator. He was a slave. And for me, that's was like I grew up watching that, and I was like, yeah, that's just what you need to become a barbarian, the ultimate barbarian. That's the training program. And then I show it to my wife, who's like super empathetic.
Yeah.
And I look over, and she's just white in the face and horrified at the gladiator scene. And she's like, he was a slave that had to push a wheel for 10 years, and then he had to be a gladiator against his will. And this is horrible. We had to turn it off. But it's like, she's right. Like, we shouldn't have to go through these things to become the barbarian, you know?
Don't forget, though, he was also bred like livestock because he was the most muscly of all the men.
And he got to witness his parents getting beheaded. So that really hardens you up, you know?
Exactly. It's sort of like, you don't got Batman without, his parents being killed. It's like fucked up. And that's not to say that, like, there's definitely versions of people that, you could probably be Batman without having parents who are dead. But this is just sort of how we, I guess, romanticize trauma sometimes, I guess. I don't know. Well, it helps. It makes it a little bit more digestible, I guess.
It seems like everybody has, all the heroes have their abilities kind of dropped on them, whether it's the Matrix where they can just download it, or they get bitten by a spider or whatever. They just kind of can, they just kind of make it instant. And I think that leads people to maybe see how hard it is, to get good at something and back away.
Yeah.
You might want to learn how to draw because you can't get bitten by a good artist. You know what I mean?
Yeah. People get discouraged when they suck at stuff and they don't like follow up with it. But yeah, it's weird. Like in pop culture, it's like always the catalyst for heroism or becoming like a better version of yourself, in like action movies or comic book movies. It's always like, it's an act of God, freak accident type thing. Or it's like a very traumatic event that like spurs this on as like a catalyst for change. It's never just like, you know what? I would be better like this, and I'm going to find the drive and the determination to do this. And what's the motivating factor that isn't something terrible? It's always something terrible, at least in movies. But in real life, it doesn't have to be because, my motivating factor was, having a daughter. So
right. That's what I was just going to say. Like, I think a lot of times, maybe especially for guys, but I'm sure for everybody, the catalyst to change is having a kid. Because like for me, I still remember her being pregnant and there's not an extra person in the house yet, but I still started looking back at my life and my actions and the choices that I've made and the way I've treated people. And it reminded me of that scene in Fight Club where Ed Norton has all the flashback memories all of a sudden to realize, oh, it's been me all along. Remember that? Like, I've been the asshole all along. Yeah. Oh, so all of a sudden you start seeing situations in a different light. Like if somebody's just witnessing your entire life and you can't like give any alternative facts for why you're still cool, there's somebody's just watching you in an innocent sort of way. You're like, oh, well, if some innocent is just watching me do this kind of stuff, then I am being an asshole. So that's when I had to be like, okay, I think I got to start figuring out how to change.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing too. Like you'll change consciously. And some people will change like unconsciously. And some people like, some people change for the worse when they have kids. They just like double down on being dicks. And it's like, no, I want my freedom and I need to have this and da-da-da. And that's when, they go out and start having affairs and shit. But other people like, I'm sure you were like an upstanding citizen before having a kid. Like I'm willing to put money on it, although we don't know each other terribly well. But you had the drive to, examine yourself from another angle for the betterment of yourself, for the betterment of, the child you're about to have. Because like obviously like a part of your character, of your person is that you must be a caring person.
Yeah. But I think that, one thing that let's equate it to another bit of pop culture, Bryan Cranston, right? I think about him because like I've had to channel his character in Malcolm in the Middle in the last few years since being a dad, of like if something's going on in public or that's even dangerous or if somebody else is being an asshole or whatever, you can channel Malcolm in the Middle, Bryan Cranston, and be the goofy dad and start with some small talk and smile, and then kind of gently point out that somebody is, could be doing things better, differently, or go away, possibly, whatever you need to do to keep your house safe or whatever. Where before, like you said, you've grown up trying to not get your ass kicked all the time, getting embittered about that. And that puts you in sort of a puffed up sort of state where you can channel Bryan Cranston in Breaking Bad of being like, I'm a tough guy now, and I'm just gonna start off by being an asshole to strangers who I feel are doing something wrong. Just like I got caught up in being like the community vigilante. And it also goes back to what we were talking about before with suicidal ideations, where I realized later in life that when I was like 17 to 20, I thought that the best case scenario for me having a successful life was to like die in the act of saving somebody, right? Like to be a vigilante, a Batman figure, and to like save somebody from a bad guy or a bus or whatever is, and then then I would be like chalked up as a hero. It would be over and I wouldn't have to try anymore. Like when you're that age, you can't picture the amount of effort and work that goes into having a good life and being a good person and being successful in all of it for as long as it's going to be for that many years, because you just haven't been around for very long. So I kind of pictured that, I'm going to be Batman. I'm going to be some kind of masked vigilante who will like save people. That's how I'm going to be successful.
I think I understand that. I definitely had like a lot of like sort of fantasies about that when I was younger, not having a real good gauge on what like a good person could be that was realistic, not having like a gauge on what a good like man is that was realistic. You know what I mean? And when I say man, like I hate talking about what it takes to be a man, because that's bullshit. It's just if you're a man, you're a man. Like it's nothing more than just the physical aspects of it. But not having like a good sort of like role model for like a father figure. It's like, what could I be? I could be Batman. Like, how do you be good? You fucking fuck up people that do wrong. When it's like there's so much more nuance to that, and reality's a lot more, gray than just black and white.
Projection, man. You can't be focusing all your negative energy on the people out there who are doing messing up.
How many people do you think got fucked up with layoffs from? Let's look at it like that. Like if it was a real situation, I bet you this line gets crossed somewhere in the comics. I bet you there's people that get laid off from Wayne Enterprises that, they got families to feed, and it's around Christmas time and they get desperate and they resort to stealing. And maybe one of them robs, a guy with a hot dog cart. Maybe he escalates. Maybe he robs a guy with a grocery store. Maybe the guy comes in and he robs someone with a jewelry store. Cut to, he gets beat up by Batman. You know what I mean? Cut to, he's like cemented in this life of villainy now because he's become vindictive because he was beaten up by Batman. When it's like, like Batman kind of in turn made this guy. So, through like, social neglect and not really having like a good emotional intelligence, you kind of, can be a fucking shitty person when you're not doing anything overtly wrong. But, if you're not, being overtly helpful, you're not really being helpful at all. I don't know. Does any of that fucking make sense?
It makes total sense. Because it reminded me of the last time I watched a Batman movie, because I grew up, I think I'm a little older than you. So when I was in high school, I was already deep into comics and had the copy of Frank Miller's Dark Knight and just thought that was the best thing ever. Loved Batman. And then this Batman merch started coming out and I started wearing the Batman t-shirts like just a little bit before people knew that a movie was going to be coming out.
Yeah.
And then like 8 months later, everybody's wearing a Batman t-shirt. But for a long time, everybody in high school was calling me Batman because I would wear like a black trench coat and a Batman shirt all the time.
That's funny.
So I kind of worshipped him for a while.
I get that. I used to wear a cape to school too. Along with the grease up there, I would do that sometimes. Nice. I had a Batman cape. Yeah.
And then the last one that came out, I believe, was the one with the guy from Twilight, right?
Yeah.
Which looked cool. I think the design and the look of it is really what I always wanted back then, of this very sort of gritty, more realistic.
Yeah.
You can see the stitches in the leather, kind of a looking Batman.
Yeah.
But when I watched it, I'm like, doesn't this guy have any more like problem-solving skills?
Yeah.
He's just punching everybody. Just like, stop punching. I didn't even get all the way through it. I was just like, I don't want to watch any more punching.
Yeah, he kind of like had this air to him where he kind of seemed like the character of Bruce Wayne and Batman in that movie in particular. If he was a real guy, he would probably be a few degrees away from being like a Columbine shooter type guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like,
and that goes back to what we were saying.
This guy's doing the right things for the wrong reasons, and he's very unfocused in his like methods, which like made for an interesting take on like the character of Batman. But also, it's like, this isn't good. Like, Batman is not like good in that movie, which is interesting. Yeah. But
he's not handling his trauma well.
No, he's not like. Yeah, Batman never really has either. Batman's fucked up, man.
Well, that's what goes back to what we were talking about of like, you can, maybe get some counseling, get some help, talk to a professional. You can, self-soothe as well by just like, and hopefully in addition, if you need to, but just drawing and making art and stuff, you can let out those demons. That's and express your darkest fantasies, where the people who bottle it all up and don't do any of those things might twist off.
Exactly. It's a safe way to examine those things, like we talked about, those things that are taboo, those things that are morbid, those things that are strange, because it's just like a cartoon at the end of the day. It's a comic book at the end of the day. It's a movie at the end of the day. It doesn't have to be anything. It's real. It's rooted in reality and things like that. But it's not like because you draw like sword and sorcery stuff, like you're going to go out in public and start cutting people's heads off with an axe. Or, you draw or read horror comics and you're going to become a fucking serial killer ghoul. It's just, this is the safe way to look at these things that are, a part of, everyone's humanity and existence to a degree, whether they want to admit it or not. Like, it's strange.
It is.
Yeah. I hate to do this to you, but I should probably get going. I think I've missed like 5 phone calls in the last 10 minutes.
Okay. I think we did perfectly.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's great.
I do appreciate the time and getting to talk to you and getting to know you a little bit more. I did enjoy it. So thank you. I would love to talk to you anytime that you'd like to.
This has been the Cheap Chills Show. For more spooky fun, follow us on Instagram at Cheap Chills Fan Club. Thank you for listening.